So I've put together a practical list of weapons that I've used throughout my leveling up process in the Division 2 from when I was Agent 0 all the way through World Tier 2. And based on this experience, I'll share with you what weapons they are and why I think they're very useful in the game. You see, when you're in combat, every encounter needs you to be very practical. If you want to take down a sniper, then practicality would dictate that you avoid using something like, say, a shotgun. In essence, this video is not to show you the most overpowered weapons, but the most practical ones to use in combat scenarios. Because as beautiful as the so-called exotics may be, or as nice sounding as the name of some other weapons may seem, they're usually just trophies and will most likely serve you very little purpose in combat. So, based on parameters like accuracy, rate of fire, effectiveness, damage, I've put together a list of weapons that you can be looking out for to actually use in the beginning of the game and all the way through endgame to actually have some real enjoyment while in combat. Now, I've picked these weapons in no particular order, but instead I've just put them out there for you to see and know what kinds of weapons you can use over the course of the game. So, the first weapon I'm going to highlight is in the assault rifle class, and this one is a dead giveaway. It's the Police M4 replica. It's a high RPM weapon with good stability and decent accuracy that will help you win a firefight. You see, when you consider that this weapon also has a blueprint from when you start the game, I would say that this is the most practical weapon in Tom Clancy's The Division 2 because every time you level up and that weapon is now outdated, you can just go back to the base of operations and craft a new one that matches your character level. Also, its low reload time makes it a very good utility weapon, so it's easy to trade off and be able to switch your magazines while you're face tanking and actually in combat. So I would say this is one of the best and most reasonably done weapons in Tom Clancy's The Division 2. The second weapon on this list is in the AR category, and this weapon has always been legendary from the Division 1, but with the constant change of metas and balancing and the fact that weapons like the LVOAC and the lightweight M4 took over the meta, this weapon just pretty much fell through the cracks for a lot of people. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to present to you the tactical ACR. This weapon can almost rival some Marksman rifles when it comes to range. And though its RPM isn't that high, the accuracy in this weapon is actually very good. In fact, from this footage, you can see me just shredding away even in low visibility because this weapon does the job. With its slow firing, you can also add an extended mag and gain more bullets for extensive damage to NPCs. The weapon is almost a sniper in assault rifle form, and believe it or not, if you're talking about trading in some fights and you may not even have time to start switching to your Marksman rifle, this weapon is going to serve you very well, especially for those of you who want to run a long range weapon but are not necessarily too keen on how the sniper rifles work in this Division 2 game. I can say that the tactical ACR will be a weapon that you will enjoy using so much. Just note that if you don't have extra bullets, you're going to run out of bullets very quickly because you're going to pretty much be very dependent on this weapon once you start using it and once you gain a liking to it. The third weapon on the list is in the rifle family, and that is the SIG, the SG-17 or SG-716 or whatever it is you want to call it. And at first, I didn't like this weapon when I first started playing the game, and I started trying other weapons in the rifle class, and all in all, I circled back to coming back to this weapon. And let me tell you something. With an accuracy such as this, it's crazy how well this firecracker can land headshots on NPCs. You see, if you have this rifle and you're on the fence about using it, don't hesitate. It has a high RPM that will send dozens of bullets to the enemy, and if you spec well by adding critical hit damage, adding some critical hit chance, and getting some brand sets that will up your damage, you can win trades if you're in the close-up scenario because of how fast this weapon can actually fire with a decent amount of damage. Now, on the list again, the next weapon I want to speak about is the MK17, which is also a rifle. This weapon is very accurate, deals good damage, and has a very decent stability. And surprisingly, this weapon is quite ugly in its appearance, so I can see how aesthetically it may not be pleasing to a lot of people, but its utility is unsurpassed. Run with this bad boy, and it probably will surprise you how well it does in long-range encounters. Number 5 on the list for me is actually very controversial, and this is the Infantry MG5. And there are a lot of other LMGs that I could have picked on this list, but I just chose this weapon because of a few things that I want you to consider. Now, one of the things for a weapon like this is the rate of fire is so fast, and so that inherently increases your damage. And once you have that rate of fire, you also have to think about the amount of accuracy this thing actually has with it. This LMG is very accurate. And in a situation where you actually want to deal a lot of damage, this weapon actually works. But here's the caveat. In order to run a weapon like this with a controller, it will most likely be an eyesore unless you're really good at controlling the weapon, because it fires really fast, and before you kind of get it in line, you may have lost like half your magazine on just shooting random bullets. So what I would say is, if you're on console and this LMG doesn't work for you, then there are a whole lot of others. There's the RPK, and which is slower in its rate of fire. There's also the M249B, which I think is a very solid weapon. In fact, it's one of my favorites. Now, another thing with LMGs like this are their reload speeds are actually very slow. Unless you talk about maybe the L8 or the RPK, these weapons have a better reload time. So that's something you have to consider. But for me, I would run these slow firing LMGs every time, every day, because they have a lot more bullets and they actually deal a lot of damage. But I've picked the Infantry MG5 because of its rate of fire and its accuracy. Those are the two things that really stood out for me when I made this pick. But if you have any other picks for LMGs, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm still learning just like you are. Number 6 is in the Marksman rifle family, and with the number of Marksman rifles in the game, I'll most definitely give my preference to the SR1 Marksman rifle. This is new in the Division 2. It's different from the SRS A1 or the Covert SRS. And with this SR1 Marksman rifle, there's something to be said about the stability of this weapon that crowns it the king of headshots. You see, in my time using this weapon, I was able to quickly close many cases of bad NPC syndrome. And with this weapon in my agent's hand, those black tusks did not even stand a chance. And for those of you who know me, who've played the game with me, you know that I cannot shoot for nothing. I don't touch marksman rifles just because I'm not really as accurate as I could be with them. But I want to say that this marksman rifle does the job. And if I say that a marksman rifle is actually very stable, this marksman rifle does very well. Now, there are other high damage marksman rifles in the game. You can get the M700 Tactical. You can also get the M700 Carbon. You can get the custom M44. You can get the hunting M44, which are hard-hitting rifles. But this marksman rifle just does the job. It's just really there to make a clean shot whenever you hit your target. And so it's just one of those weapons that I actually prefer when it comes to marksman rifles, and I say it's very practical when it comes to using them. Now, number 7 is in the SMG family, and this is straight up the MPX. High rate of fire, a lot of bullets, and it makes close combat with it very, very good to use. The reason I say close combat is in some missions and in some areas, you're going to be moving around through buildings, and it's going to be easy to be able to turn around and wield a weapon like this. Now, as a general rule, I'll avoid using SMGs in long-range trade-offs because they'll do nothing for you. But if you get a high-end MPX with some decent talents, this is definitely one of the better SMGs in the game. And if you know how to do the evade reload, this is one thing that actually works with a lot of SMGs because they have a very low reload speed. So you can evade while you're reloading your weapon and actually continue to trade off bullets in order to reduce the amount of damage that you take. Number 8 on the list is another SMG, which may not be too popular with those on PC, but very friendly with controllers. And however, this is one SMG though that a lot of players, be it PC or even on console, will be happy to use, and that is the Vector. This Vector has pretty much the best RPM that I've seen in the game at 1200 rounds per minute. This is most definitely a shredder, and if you were to sport this, you would probably not notice a lot of damage initially, but when you carefully fine-tune your critical hit chance and your critical hit damage, what you're in for is a delightful surprise of how well a weapon like this can do a lot of damage. So when you get a Vector, be sure to run something like the Sokolov Concern, which are one of those brand sets that grant you critical hit chance and critical hit damage in order to leverage more of what the SMG can do. So that's kind of how we're going to run SMGs in this game based on the current meta and the build availability. Now, finally on this list is the shotgun family, which I would say, in my opinion, the M870 is actually better now. The SPAS-12 is out there, but I like the M870 because I feel like this is actually very accurate, very useful. Even though it has a low RPM, it's perfect for headshots and stagger, and it's very good at destroying enemy weak points. If you have a significant amount of damage to elites, you will enjoy using this shotgun, especially in crushing the armor of these NPCs. Now, there are other shotguns that may be preferable to other people, maybe because of the way that they fire and all that stuff, and that's great. So I would say in a situation like that, please leave that in the comment section, because we want to help the new players to kind of understand why we're picking our weapon choices as veteran division players. So now that I've provided each weapon as, practical in some cases and readily available in most cases, because they'll just have higher drop rates, there are other weapons that you can also replace with these weapons as well. And some of them have similar rates of fire. Some of them have similar stability and similar damage. And so if you're searching for a weapon to use in combat, say maybe you've progressed to a new level or a new world tier, and you're maybe trying to get a replacement for, who knows, your FAMAS. And if you find a CTAR 21, that can act as a substitute. If you're trying to perhaps find a weapon, if you don't maybe have an MPX, and you want a weapon that's going to probably do the job for you, that's going to do some decent damage and be able to have high rate of fire and has a stability of the SMG, another substitute for that can be the MP5 temporarily. Not the MP7, but the MP5. So there are weapons that would actually match in specific stats, but not necessarily be identical. And so this is kind of one of the ways that you can actually do them. So you can look through this list. If there's a weapon that's actually closely related to them, you can use them to run your end game or your progression content in the Division 2. So that's all I have for today. If you have any weapons that you can add to this list, please do so in the comment section. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Thank you for the comments and the feedback. And thank you for those of you who've subbed. You've pretty much just pushed and elevated this channel to a higher subscriber count, and I really appreciate all of that. So with all that being said, I'll see you in my next video. Peace.